listening to the Zero to Travel podcast, where we explore exciting travel-based work, lifestyle, and business opportunities, helping you to achieve your wildest travel dreams. And now your host, world wanderer and travel junkie, Jason Moore.
Hey, it's Jason here with ZeroToTravel.com. Welcome to the show. Thanks for hanging out, letting me bring a little travel into your ears today. This is the show to help you travel the world on your terms, to fill your life with as much travel as you desire, no matter what your situation or experience. And we have a special one for you today. I often like to get in touch with my other travel podcaster friends, especially the ones that have been doing it for a long time and are making some incredible shows that you might be interested in. And this week, we're dropping an episode from Chris Christensen. He has been hosting the Amateur Traveler podcast for longer than I've been hosting this one. And very much destination focused is this show. And one of the things I love about it is that you get a recommended itinerary for each of these destinations. And you also learn a bit about how to do it, what there is to see in terms of historical sites and other attractions, things you might want to hit up, everything from thermal spas and breweries to medieval villages. Really depends on where you're going, because he goes to a different destination each week. So you're a traveler, you love destinations. I figured, hey, if you haven't checked out the Amateur Traveler podcast, I wanted to give Chris, my buddy, a shout out and drop his episode today on Normandy, France, a place I've always wanted to visit. So I really enjoyed this one, and I thought I would let you take a trip there today as well. So please enjoy this episode. Travel to Normandy. You can subscribe to the Amateur Traveler podcast anywhere you get your shows. Thanks to Chris for hooking us up with this episode to bring to you today. And thank you for listening. Please enjoy.
Amateur Traveler, episode 914. Today, Amateur Traveler talks about invasions and Joan of Arc, cider and camembert, Monet and William the Conqueror as we go to Normandy in France. This is Chris Christensen from Amateur Traveler. Let's talk about Normandy. I'd like to welcome Kat Butler from worldwidehoneymoon.com and the Worldwide Honeymoon podcast, and also relevant to this episode, Voyager.com, because we're going to talk today about Normandy. Kat, welcome to the show.
Yay, thank you so much for having me.
Thanks. It's always great to have another travel podcaster on. I have a higher confidence that this will go well, especially someone who talks a lot about France. So,
yes.
Kat, what is your connection with France as a whole and then Normandy specifically?
So my connection with France as a whole is it started back in 2012 when I was studying abroad in Grenoble.
Ooh.
Yeah, in the Alps. And so I spent a semester there, and that's where I fell in love with France. And after that, I just was addicted to traveling to France and decided, hey, why don't I start a second blog all about France travel called France Voyager? And it's my excuse to go back a lot now, which is great. And to Normandy specifically, one of my best friends is from Deauville in Normandy. And so she grew up there and just had so many great things to say about it. And Deauville is actually a sister city to Lexington, Kentucky, which is where I went to university. And that's how I met her. And yeah, so I just got a soft spot for both the Alps in France, but also Normandy through my friend. And I've spent some time in Normandy through that.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And why should someone go to Normandy?
Normandy, I think, just offers so much. And I know that's a very cliche answer to this question, but it really does offer more. Most people, when they think of Normandy, they think of the D-Day beaches. And my road trip that I did last year was literally to prove that there was so much more to Normandy than the D-Day beaches. I mean, you do certainly have that, but you've got Mont Saint Michel if you want to see that, the cider route. So if you want to try like Calvados, which is apple brandy, or apple cider, that sort of thing, you can do that. You've got the countryside. I think that Normandy makes some of the best cheese. You have the beaches, like beautiful beaches, especially if you go to Deauville, which is known as the 21st arrondissement of Paris. It's such a popular place to visit for Parisians, for beaches and luxury shopping and horse racing. And you also
we'll get there.
Sorry.
We'll get there.
Yeah, I'm so excited. And then you also have places like Giverny, you've got the Monet stuff, you've got Etretat, which has the beautiful cliffs. So there's just so much more to Normandy than what people think as far as like the D-Day beaches and stuff. It's well worth a visit. People are super nice. It's just a beautiful place to go.
Excellent. What itinerary are you going to recommend for us?
Yeah, so I'm just going to talk about the itinerary I did last year because it's a perfect 7 days. You really get a great feel of Normandy and has a bit of everything, which I really enjoy. So I would just start out day one. I recommend renting a car just because that's the easiest way to get around Normandy, especially if you're going to go to some of the smaller towns or do the cider route. But day one, rent a car. I did it from Gare de Lyon in Paris. As a side note, be sure to take the highway right away out of Gare de Lyon instead of forgetting to do that and then having to drive through Paris and through the Arc de Triomphe area. That was terrifying, so don't make my mistake.
Yeah, we did it from the airport. We flew in, spent a night at the airport. I think it was Charles de Gaulle, and then hopped in a car. And Normandy is how far away from there? It's 3 hours?
It depends, honestly, where you go in Normandy. The first stop on this itinerary is Giverny, which is only, an hour and a half from Paris, depending on traffic and where you're going.
I didn't put Giverny in Normandy. That surprised me when you mentioned that.
Yes, it is in Normandy. So yeah, Giverny is a great place. A lot of people just do it as a day trip from Paris, but I think it's a great first stop to break up your first day driving. But yeah, you go to Normandy, you can go to Giverny.
And why are we going to Giverny?
Yes, we're going to see Monet's house and gardens in Giverny. So this is where Monet lived. You can go visit the house there. It's absolutely stunning. Inside of the house, it has replicas of some of his most famous paintings.
Okay. How big is the house? Because his paintings tend to be large.
Yes. His house is, I believe it was 2 stories. It was quite large.
Okay.
And the paintings, depending on which room you're in, do cover from floor to ceiling.
Yeah.
Like stacks of them. So
yeah,
there's
for
several.
People who don't know, if you have extra time and you have time in Paris before you go to Giverny, I would recommend going to l'Orangerie, which is the museum where you'll walk into a room and there'll be 3 paintings, just 3 paintings. But it's that wall, that wall, and that just covered with water lilies.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. And if you want to do that beforehand, that is a really good way to get prepared to actually see where those lilies were painted in person at Monet's house and gardens. So you go, the gardens I think are definitely the best part, but you get to see the lily ponds. We went in September of last year, so the lily pods were in bloom and it was just absolutely stunning. There's flowers blooming at any given time other than the winter, of course. So it's always a great time to go and visit Giverny and spend a couple of hours at the house there. There's also the Museum of Impressionists in Giverny as well that you can go and check out. We spent some time there. We got lunch in Giverny before we hopped back in the car and did a fun little stop before our final stop of the day. And that was to the town of Les Andelys, it sits just along the Seine. So you have beautiful views here. And what you're going to want to do is stop at Chateau Gaillard. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. My French is not like perfect.
It seems to be better than mine, so.
But this was a castle built in around the 1100s by Richard of Lionheart. And it's just a really cool castle to go check out because, again, Normandy has so much rich history. So you have history from, of course, the D-Day beaches, but also the 100 Years' War and just even prior to that, of course. So you can go check out this castle there. It's on the top of the hill. It's very scenic and overlooks the Seine and the town. And it's just a really great little stop to break up from Giverny to the next stop for this day.
Okay.
And then after going to Les Andelys, you're going to end in Rouen for the night. And by this point, you're just exploring a little bit of the town. I think the evening was all I really needed to see there at that point. It's a great place to walk around. You see the Grosse Horloge. You can see the ruined cathedral, the old town, just walk around.
Back up a little bit here. The Grosse Horloge, the large, and I don't know the word horloge.
Clock.
Oh,
it's a
the
clock.
Large clock. Okay.
It's a big clock. Yes. Yeah. Yes, of course. And then going to check out the ruined cathedral or the Rouen Cathedral. And what I think is really special here, especially as you're here at night to wrap up your day, is during the summer from late May through late September, they actually have a light show projected onto the cathedral, which is really fun to see. And it starts between like 10:30. It just depends on the time that you go. But in July and August, it's every night, and it's on Fridays and Saturdays the rest of the time outside of that in the summer. So it's definitely worth going to see. You've got music playing in the background and lots of different things being projected onto the building. And it was really cool to check out while you're in Rouen.
Now, Rouen, the other person who is very much associated with Rouen is Joan of Arc.
Yes.
And is Rouen the place where there is a church dedicated to her, or is that Honfleur?
I'm not quite sure. I know that Orléans has a church that's got stained glass windows of her. I was just there in May, but that's the only one I know of. I know that she obviously played a big part in Rouen, but the only church that I'm aware of is the one in Orléans.
The one that I'm thinking of, yes, is a modern church with stained glass windows in Rouen. So very different from the cathedral, but it's a building that is dedicated to her. It's right near the spot where she was burned at the stake.
Oh, yes. I believe that's where she was burned in the stake in Rouen. Yeah.
There's a statue outside of Joan of Arc.
Okay. So in May, I was in the Loire Valley. I learned a lot about Joan of Arc when it comes to Chateau de Chinon and like Orléans, because she saved Orléans from the siege. So yeah.
From those nasty really British people. Yeah.
Yep. Exactly. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, so you can go check that out if you have the time when you're in Rouen, but definitely go check out the light show if you're there in the summertime. That's definitely worth it.
Excellent.
Yeah. And so you're ending in Rouen for the night. Day 2, you've got the morning in Rouen. So if you want to have a cup of coffee somewhere, if you want to go check out that cathedral of Joan of Arc stuff, if you're a big Joan of Arc history buff. Personally, we went to, I believe it was the City Hall, because there was a plaque about Cleveland there, because I guess they had something there for World War I. So that was just a sentimental thing. You did not have to do that, obviously, but that was cool to check out.
The other thing we did, and you'd have to get there earlier than your itinerary, is if you're not going to be in Paris, the Museum of Art, which is traditional art in Rouen, is also lovely and free.
Oh, nice. Do they have Monet? Because Monet
tends
painted.
To be closer to, I would say, the Dutch masters, that kind of style.
Okay.
The ones, at least, that I have pictures of that I remember.
Okay.
So not focusing on Impressionists necessarily.
Okay. Yeah, because I know Monet has a big painting of the Rouen Cathedral, but it's in the d'Orsay Museum, in the Museum of d'Orsay.
Interesting.
Yeah. But anyway, after Rouen, you're going to drive to the beautiful town of Etretat. And this is right along the coast. It has a nice little pebbly beach, but it's most famous for its chalk cliffs with arches. So it has 3 big arches along the shore there.
Okay.
Yeah, so there are 3 natural arches. They're called Porte de Val, Porte de Mont, and Menaport. And you can see the first 2, Porte de Val and Porte de Mont, from the beach itself. The main beach in Etretat. And then what I recommend doing, and we really enjoyed doing this, was hiking up the cliff. If you're looking at the ocean in front of you, go to the left. And if you take the left path up, you'll get to see the 3rd arch, which is really cool.
Okay.
Yeah. And then you also get to see L'Aiguille, which is a rock formation that's jutting out of the water. And L'Aiguille just means needle. So they call it the needle. So it's got lots of really cool rock formations. White chalk cliffs. It's very beautiful. It's got the Les Planches, which is the boulevard, the boardwalk called Les Planches, that you can walk around. This is a great place to get lunch and just enjoy. If it's a hot day, you could maybe go for a swim. But that's a big thing to see in Etretat, or the big chalk cliffs with the arches and the needle. Also, another really cool thing to see if you both have the time and are interested in this sort of thing, a lot of French people will probably be familiar with this town, as it is the place where author Maurice Leblanc used to live. And he was the author of the Arsène Lupin series. And the reason why Americans might know it is it's actually on Netflix now. They have turned the show to a modernized version of this like gentleman burglar. And it's now a Netflix series that I love to watch. My husband and I enjoy watching that. So you can go to the house where the author lived, and it's a whole museum dedicated to the series about Lupin. That's pretty cool. Yeah, that's a kind of a niche thing if you want to go check that out in Etretat. But anyway, spend most of the day there. It's a beautiful town. Go and explore, walk around, do some of the hiking on the cliffs. After that, you can drive to Honfleur, which is a very popular place. I didn't spend too much time there. The main thing is the old harbor that you can go and check out, and it's very beautiful. So I just spent maybe like 30, maybe an hour or two at the most. I think that's a good amount of time to just walk around the harbor, maybe get an ice cream, just admire it before ending your day.
Before you leave the city in Honfleur, I would recommend just the other side of the colorful harbor is a wooden church of Saint Catherine of Alexandria. And the interesting thing about this, because it is a wooden church and an old church, it was built by the shipbuilders there. And so it looks like the roof of the church looks like an upside down ship or two upside down ships. It's a double nave, but it's very beautiful.
Okay. Yeah. So just spend an hour or two walking around the harbor doing that and seeing the church. And then you're just going down the road to Deauville. And Deauville, you're going to base yourself here for a few days, which is what I recommend doing. And so, yeah, you'll end the day in Deauville, check into your hotel. Deauville's a very beautiful town. It's a fancy town because it definitely has luxury shops and it's a resort town. But yeah, end the night in Deauville, grab dinner, and then you'll end your day there and then start day number 3.
Okay. And for people who aren't sure how things are spelled in French and you're trying to look things up, all these places' names will be in the show notes. So don't worry about it.
Yeah, because how it's pronounced may not always look like how it is spelled in
French.
English. Yes, it's French. But yeah, like I said, you're going to spend a few days in Deauville as far as like basing yourself there. And so day number 3, I recommend actually going and doing the route de cidre or the cider route. And you can easily do this from Deauville.
Okay.
And from here, you're exploring lots of cider farms and things like that. Now, I will warn you that some of them aren't always English speaking, depending on where you're at. So I'm just going to recommend the ones that I know have English speakers. So you could even do this as a half-day trip from Deauville if you wanted to. But Calvados, Pierre Huet, they have English speakers there that they can guide you through a tasting. You could do a tour. And then also Chateau de Briol also has tours in English. And you'll want to sign up for that in advance. You make a reservation for that because that one does fill up pretty quickly. But yeah, that one has an English tour, which is great. And you get to try lots of different things, including Calvados, which is their apple brandy, Pommeau, which
I rather like.
I do too.
Liked the cider, but I wasn't surprised by that.
Yeah. Yeah, Calvados is really good. And I love that they'll offer it to you at the end of a meal everywhere pretty much at Normandy. They're like, would you like a little Calvados? Instead of coffee, it's Calvados at the end of your meal. But yeah, you can definitely try Calvados there. Again, it's their apple brandy. Pommeau, which is an apple brandy and apple juice mix. They also have cider, of course. You have the cider brut, which is that drier cider, and then cidre doux, or soft cider, essentially. It's sweet and it has less alcohol in it too. Pear cider, and then of course there's all sorts of apple products, apple juice, pear juice, apple cider vinegar, all of that. But yeah, Calvados, Pierre Huet, they have English, so you'll be good there. And then also Chateau de Briol do tours in English, so that's great. So those are some good places to just check out. I have others that I visited, but again, they mostly speak French, so I can list them out if you'd like. But yeah, and then also in between exploring the cider route, you can also check out the Jardin du Pays d'Auge, and it's just a beautiful garden area that has some traditional Norman architecture, some beautiful different types of gardens, a hedge maze, some farm animals, that sort of thing. You can definitely check that out. But I would say exploring the cider route is a fun thing to do for at least a half day while you're in Deauville because it's pretty close to Deauville.
Okay.
And then on the way back from the cider route, I recommend stopping in the town of Pont-l'Évêque and going to a cheese shop and doing a cheese tasting. So Normandy is actually known for 4 different types of soft, bloomy rind cheese. And you probably are aware of Camembert. Camembert is definitely the most famous. You can get it here in the US pretty easily. But there are 3 other kinds that are also soft, bloomy rind cheeses that are equally delicious. There's Pont-l'Évêque, Livarot, and Neuchâtel. as well as camembert. So you can go to a cheese shop in Pont-l'Évêque and do a tasting of all 4 of those cheeses, and then maybe pick some up for a picnic later if you want to do that. So I think that's a really cool way to get a better introduction into the cheeses of Normandy, because I think that Normandy makes some of the best cheeses in France. So you definitely want to try that while you're there.
Okay.
But yeah, so you have the cider route, Pont-l'Évêque for some cheese tasting, and then you can spend the rest of your evening in Deauville, grabbing
Was there
dinner.
a particular cheese shop you were recommending?
I don't have it written down.
No problem.
We just found a cheese shop. We parked, found a cheese shop, and went in. They all offered tastings. If it says degustation, that means they offer tastings.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good to know.
And then day 4, you want to spend the actual day in Deauville. So it's a really cool town. It's well worth checking out. There's plenty to see and do in a day, depending on what time of the year you're there. There's quite a lot. So you're going to spend day 4 just exploring Deauville. You can have a beach day if it's hot outside. It's got this big, huge, beautiful sandy beach. Or you could just walk along the beach. They're very famous for their boulevard, or Les Planches. And they also have a gorgeous blue lifeguard stand that you can check out as well. So it's just neat to explore that area. And I think what's really unique about walking along the Les Planches, or the boardwalk, is the fact that it's next to these old Pompeian baths from the 1920s. And there are celeb names on the gates going to the different changing cabins of the baths that are lined right along the boardwalk itself. And so you'll see names from like Tom Hanks to Rachel Weisz to Rob Pattinson, all of those, because Deauville actually hosts the American Film Festival in September every year. So that's why that you have all the celebrity names there. So that's really cool to check out, is the beach area with all of that. I highly recommend, if you're there, to go to, especially on the weekends, to go to the Deauville market. There's lots of fresh fruit and veggies and textiles, all sorts of things that you can buy. I love a good market, so it's always worth going to check out while you're there. And what I actually recommend doing for lunch this day is actually walking across the little bridge area to Marché aux Poissons Trouville. It's their fish market. And so that is a really cool area because you have all of these seafood stands everywhere, and it's right along the ocean. So it's fantastically fresh seafood. But what's unique is you can order your food to be cooked there, and they'll serve it to you. So you just pick out whatever the catch of the day is that you want. You go sit down, have a glass of wine, and they'll bring it all to you freshly made. And I just feel like you can't get really anything fresher seafood wise than that. So it's such a really cool thing to do while you're in the Deauville Trouville area, because they're right next to each other. You could literally walk from Deauville to Trouville to see it. Highly recommend that. Yeah. And then just enjoying Deauville, walking around. The villas are beautiful. The architecture is beautiful. If you want to go luxury shopping, you can. There's an Hermès, a Longchamp, a Galeries Lafayette. If you want to spend that kind of money, you can. But yes, it is called the 21st arrondissement of Paris for a reason. It's a very popular resort town, so you can certainly relax and enjoy your time in Deauville during that day.
The other building that I was impressed with is the 5-star hotel in Deauville, and I've lost track of what the name of it is, but a very romantic looking 5-star hotel near the beach.
I think it's attached to the casino, the Hotel Barrière, I think, casino. Okay. Yes. So you could go gambling there too if you want, because they have a giant casino on the beach with a hotel. Yeah. And then if you're there during horse racing season, they also have 2 horse racing tracks nearby that you can go and see horse racing, because it is a
When is horse racing season?
I don't know off the top of my head. I want to say it's in the spring and in the fall.
Okay.
Not typically too much in the summertime. But also being a town that's known for its horses, and if you walk around Deauville, you'll actually see in the middle of the city horse stables just in the middle of the city randomly. You can actually go and sign up to go horseback riding if you want to. So that's certainly something that you can do as well. I did that on my last visit this spring, which was a lot of fun. You can go horseback riding on the beach. Just know that if you do it, it has to be before, I think, 10 a.m. and after 7 p.m. Between 10 a.m. and 7 p.m., they can't be on the beach. Animals can't be on the beach. So it has to be before that time. But so if you want to get up early or do a sunset, you can do that horseback riding on the beach, which is a lot of fun.
Got it.
Yeah. So day 4, you're exploring Deauville, and that's pretty much it for the day. Day 5, I know that I said I wanted to prove that there's more to Normandy than the D-Day beaches. But if you've never been to the D-Day beaches, I feel like you have to go to them. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Day number 5, I actually recommend taking a tour of the D-Day beaches. And so we ended up driving to Bayeux and then taking a tour from Bayeux. And I highly recommend it. We did a full day tour. I recommend doing that. We learned so much. The tour we went on actually ended up being, I think, the best tour I've ever been on. And I was not expecting that. I like World War II history. I like history in general. But if you get a really good tour guide, it was a very impactful and great tour that we got to do. We did the full day. We went to the Pointe du Hoc, Utah Beach, Sainte Mère Église, Omaha Beach, and then ended at the Normandy American Cemetery.
And the one of that people probably don't know, so Pointe du Hoc is this cliffside batteries, artillery batteries that the Germans had that the Rangers climbed the cliffs to assault. So a beautiful place to get a view, but also a pretty amazing place in terms of the history there.
Yeah, and you get to go inside of some of the bunkers that you can go in there.
Right.
Any sort of big hole in the ground is from bombs. So it's very Swiss cheese-like in some areas there.
Right.
So it was very interesting to see that. And then, of course, you have Utah Beach and Omaha Beach, which were big D-Day landing beaches. And
now, did you do the museums or were you doing the sites?
We just did the sites.
Okay. Because we did the opposite. We did not do the tour, even though the tour sounds like a great idea. But there are many museums in the area. Specifically, we did the one on Utah Beach, which I can highly recommend. And also the one about the airborne assaults in Saint Mère Église. So Saint Mère Église is the city where you still can see a paratrooper hanging from the belfry of the church, not a real person anymore. But if you ever saw the movie The Longest Day, they had this scene where somebody gets trapped up in the bell tower. His parachute gets stuck there. This is one of the sites where the paratroopers landed in D-Day. And this actually happened. And this person lived. He got down and was rescued and was okay. But the Airborne Museum in St. Mary Église is wonderful.
Okay. And that's separate from the Utah Beach one?
That is completely separate from the Utah Beach one, and there are many other museums. The other interesting thing is if you go into the church in St. Mary Église, you can see it is one of the only churches I've seen that has stained glass windows with paratroopers.
Oh, yes. We did go inside there and we did get to see the guy hanging from the top of the bell tower. And I believe that there's actually the cross outside of the museum. I learned this on the tour, was actually built from like an old, I think Gallo-Roman or Celtic or something. I don't know, some rock that they had put in that place.
The advantage for doing the tour. Yeah.
But another thing on the tour that we actually stopped at Place Tecoa and Saint Mary de Mont. So nobody really stops here. So this is really cool. We got this guide who was very knowledgeable and knew so much. It was great. And he told so many wonderful stories of things that happened that day, just each individuals and things. And if you go to the Saint Mary de Mont church, there's a story that he told. It also has stained glass windows with paratroopers. That's what reminded me of that.
Oh, interesting.
There, yes. And there were 2 medics that had landed just in random spots and met up at this church. And they ended up saving, I think, over 100 lives there because they turned it into a Red Cross station. And there's still like blood stains on the pews or something from them saving lives and things like that. It's crazy. And then
that might have been from the ones they didn't save, but
but they saved almost everybody. Wow. There was a guy that came in. So this is an interesting story that we learned on this, was that there was one of the soldiers came in. They only had a little bit of anesthesia left. And he refused it because there was a little boy whose family, like a local boy, his family all died in a fire and he was severely injured. And so he let him have the anesthesia. And then that man ended up passing. But the little boy ended up growing up to become a doctor after all of that and was married in the church and all of this stuff. And it was just, it was cool, the different stories. And the church was dedicated to 2 saints. This was before this all happened. So it was very serendipitous. The church was dedicated to 2 saints who were known for healing. And even before that, they had stained glass windows of like an angel coming down to save or something like that. And so it's very fitting that they have the paratroopers. So it was a very serendipitous thing. It was a cool story that we got to do as a part of that tour, which was neat. But I think
one of the reasons I do love a good tour.
Yeah. So especially when you get like a really good guide, it made a huge difference. So highly recommend that. I think if you don't do the tour, then definitely do the museums. I feel like one or the other would be a good idea because then you get more information than just seeing the beach and seeing that and not having any context.
The other thing I will say is Omaha Beach. We mentioned Utah Beach and the museum. Omaha Beach has a memorial, a very modern, large metal sculpture. And that's the beach from the movie Private Ryan.
Yeah. So, and then also if you stay at the Normandy American Cemetery, we stayed past 5. If you stay there for the 5 o'clock, they do the playing taps and they lower the flags. So that's also a really cool thing to see while you're there as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
Agreed. Cool.
But yeah, so after that, you head back to Bayo because that's where we did our day tour from. And it's a great town, which I'll talk a little bit more about the next day.
Okay.
Yeah, because pretty much most of your day is going to be doing the D-Day beaches and exploring. Because again, if you've never done it, it's definitely worth doing. So day number 6, I recommend spending the morning in Bayo. You can check out the cathedral, but I think the biggest thing to see in Bayo is going to be the Bayo Tapestry.
Agreed. Yeah.
Yeah. And I, as a big history nut, I really was excited to see the Bayo Tapestry. It is huge. It's crazy, but it's at the Bayo Tapestry Museum. You get an audio guide. They have them in English.
And what is the Bayo Tapestry?
Sorry. The Bayo Tapestry is basically the story of the conquest of England by William the Conqueror.
Right.
So it starts in 1064 with Edward the Confessor, who's king of England at the time, telling his brother-in-law to tell William that he's going to be the next in line or something. And then it goes all the way through the Battle of Hastings of 1066 and kind of the start of William the Conqueror being king. So it's huge.
And it's all hand sewn.
Yeah.
And it's 230 feet long.
230 feet. Yeah. It's ginormous. And you basically listen to it on the audio guide and you can hear all the different things and each bit of the story as it goes along. And it's highly recommended. It's definitely very worth going to check out. Yeah. So those are some big things to do in Bayo. And I also recommend this day, especially if you have a car, this might be a great day to go see Mont Saint Michel.
Okay.
And so we ended up driving from Bayo to Mont Saint Michel and checking that out for the day, because this is the other big thing to see in Normandy. And if you haven't seen it, it's definitely worth going to see. And Mont Saint Michel is a tidal island that has a giant little abbey at the top, and it's a village on the abbey. And it began with someone had a vision of St. Michael and they were like, build the church here. And that's what they did. That's just my rough little paraphrasing here with Mont Saint Michel. But it's a great place to spend the afternoon. It's absolutely stunning. There's a path that you can walk that takes maybe 30 to 45 minutes from the parking lot. Or you could just take the bus that goes right to from the parking lot to Mont Saint Michel, and you can get off there and climb up if you want to do that. But I really enjoyed there is a bus.
I didn't remember that. We just walked.
Yeah. So if you walk, though, I think you get some of the best views and great photo opportunities. So if you want to bring your camera, this is a great place for photos. And you can see the sheep in the distance and the big island itself at different angles as you walk toward it. There are actual tour groups that walk through the bay itself. If you want to sign up for that, I don't recommend it. I stuck my foot in the mud to be like, oh, I want to see what it's like. And it was, my shoe was absolutely disgusting after. And I was like, you know what? One step was all I needed. So it's just a great place to see and to check out. But yeah, walk around Mont Saint Michel. I recommend going up to the Abbey. And inside the Abbey, you do need tickets for that. I recommend booking in advance because depending on when you go, it can be quite crowded and the line was pretty long. So you can skip the line by just booking a ticket in advance. So going around there, there's lots of shops. In Mont Saint Michel, there's some restaurants.
It's very touristy.
It's very touristy. I will say that, I would just walk around the ramparts and go up the Abbey and maybe grab lunch and call it a day because it is very crowded and touristy. There are a couple museums you can go to if you really want to. We didn't. We just walked around the island and admired the views. There's the Historical Museum, which talks about the history of the island. There's the Maritime Museum that does talk about the tidal phenomenon that causes it to be a tidal island.
Mm-hmm.
So that's pretty cool that you can check out if you want to. But you can also just walk around and see the Abbey, which I highly recommend doing. And then
the one thing I would wonder, so we did it in March when the crowds were not bad. The one thing I would wonder is if you were doing it there in September, or especially if you were doing it in the summer, I might think about switching the order and doing Mont Saint Michel first thing in the day before some of the tour buses get there, and then switching around and coming back to Bayeux in the afternoon.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Doing it early in the morning. Or the island is open, I believe, quite late. The Abbey isn't open all day. I think that closes around 5. But you could also just go and see the sunset at Mont Saint Michel, and all the tour buses will be gone by then. So that's an option as well. But
interesting.
Yeah. But you could go back to Bayeux after. What we ended up doing was going to the countryside of Normandy to just enjoy another day just in the countryside. Mm-hmm. We ended near Saint-Pierre-en-Auge, and we stayed at a chateau. This is a fun little thing that you could add onto your itinerary if you want to. It's called Chateau d'Iville, and it's a renovated old chateau, and it has a garden, and they have donkeys and a pool, and it's just like a cute place in the middle of the countryside that you can stay at and just really enjoy the Norman countryside for your last full day the next day.
Okay.
So you could do that if you want to, or go to Bayeux. But I recommend going to Saint-Pierre-en-Auge. And then day 7, you're going to spend the day in Saint-Pierre-en-Auge. And we started out our day going to the Maison du Camembert, which is actually a cheese museum.
Okay.
So if you also really like soft, bloomy rind cheeses like myself, you'll probably enjoy this. But you can go to the town of Camembert, where Camembert is made, and you can go to the Camembert Museum, or the Maison du Camembert, and you learn all about how it's made, its history, the traditional practices of making it, and then there's even a little factory at the end that you get to see how it's made, obviously in the modern day way, from packaging to aging and all of that stuff. And then at the end, you get a cheese tasting, which is lovely. And so you can enjoy a little cheese museum and cheese tasting during your last day in Normandy. And then after that, I recommend checking out Saint-Pierre-en-Auge. The town itself, it's just a cute town. They have a covered marketplace that's from the Middle Ages, and it's called Al Saint-Pierre-sur-Dive. And that's really cool to check out. There's some old water wheels there. And then honestly, after checking all that out, you might just want to relax and enjoy the Norman countryside. So we just ended up relaxing at the chateau after that. But that wraps up.
Excellent. A couple things I would add that we did. We did a 3-day itinerary there. So we were not there as long as you were. We did one day at the beaches, as we talked about. We did one day in Rouen-en-Fleur, and we did Mont Saint Michel. And then there is an alternative in terms of an English-speaking place to try your Calvados, and that is Billy's.
Billy's.
So, Billy's Farm near Bayeux is a cidery, and you wouldn't be surprised to find out that they speak English. But it's just a cool little quirky place. I quite enjoyed it.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah, that's how to spend 7 days in Normandy. I highly recommend it.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Oh, what are we going to eat while we're in Normandy?
Other than all that cheese that I've talked about, fresh seafood is delicious there. Okay. Crepes, so both sweet and savory crepes.
Especially the savory, the galette.
Yes, the galettes.
Which is, when we talk about crepes, so these are the buckwheat crepes. Yes. I think that was almost all I ate while I was in Normandy. I love them, and they're quite available.
Yes, you can definitely get some buckwheat crepes or galettes. You can get some sweet ones as well. Anything with apples in it is going to be on the menu. Pork with apples, just tarte Normandy, which is like an apple tart. Right. Lots and lots of apple dishes. Of course, Calvados, things like that. Cider. This Normandy is definitely more of a apple cider kind of place versus a wine destination. You're not going to see many vineyards, but you will see lots of orchards. Lots of things with apples in them. But yeah, I would say probably the biggest things are going to be the cheese, the buckwheat crepes, and then fresh seafood.
Okay.
You're right next to the ocean. So you've got fresh oysters, whelks, anything and all things seafood.
Any recommendations on places to stay? You mentioned the one at Chateau.
Yes, I recommend in Deauville, I really enjoyed Villa Aguival Hotel and Spa. And it's actually built to look like a traditional villa in Normandy. And it's very pretty. They have a heated pool if you want that. They have a spa area. It's a really nice place to stay while you're in Deauville.
Okay.
And then the Chateau d'Yville in Saint-Pierre-en-Auge in the countryside. And then if you're going to be in Bayeux, I really liked the Hotel Reine Mathilde. That's really close to the cathedral. It's a really convenient place to stay. And then in Rouen, I stayed at Hotel Cardinal, which is right along the square next to the cathedral. So that's a really great place to stay as well.
Excellent.
Yes.
What else should we know before we pack our bags and head to Normandy?
Yeah, I just discussed a lot of the hotels. I will just give you a warning that Normandy, a lot of the hotels don't have air conditioning. They don't really need it most of the year, unless if you hit a heat wave in September like I did. But most of the time you don't need it. So places like Hotel Cardinal and even the Chateau Hotel didn't have air conditioning. So
and that is true in a lot of France.
It is true in a lot of France.
Yeah.
But other things, getting around, I think a car is going to be your best bet unless you only want to spend a couple days in like Deauville or something like that. You're going to want to have a car.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you had another day, what would you add on?
Oh, goodness.
What did you have a hard time cutting out of your itinerary when you were there?
Yeah, we didn't go to Cannes at all. That's a whole city that you can go and explore. I wish I had maybe a full day in Etretat and stayed there. I think it's such a beautiful town, but yeah, I feel like that covered a lot of it, honestly. We did the full day with the D-Day beaches and doing Mont Saint Michel and everything. Maybe add more time in the country, like just other places in the countryside because it's really pretty.
There's also some parks in the area that we did not take the time to explore at all.
Okay.
National, regional parks and things like that. So I wonder about spending more time there, but just did not. There were only so many hours in the day.
That's true. Yeah.
Excellent. As we head to wrap this up, you were standing in the prettiest spot in Normandy. Where are you standing and what are you looking at?
The first one that comes to mind is in Etretat. If you climb up that hill on the cliffs and looking out over the sea and seeing the needle and the different archways, the little chalk arches, I think that is such a stunning viewpoint to see in Normandy.
I think I would probably be in one of the old cities, in either looking at the harbor in Honfleur or looking at some of the wood-framed houses in Rouen. There's streets there, the cobblestone streets with the old wood-frame houses and things. And as an architectural fan, I just loved taking pictures of those areas.
Yeah, and even something as simple as the apple orchards that are just everywhere. You have these beautiful bucolic countryside landscapes. There was a place that we went to, one of the cider farms that had a little pond and the orchards, and sometimes you'll see cattle in the orchards. And I think that's a very beautiful place as well.
Oh, I think I'm wrong. It'd be Mont Saint Michel for me.
Oh, that too.
That's a pretty stunning place.
It's just beautiful.
Yep.
Yeah.
And one thing that makes you laugh and say only in Normandy.
I think getting stuck in traffic, but traffic is tractors. There's a lot. I can't tell you the number of times I got stuck behind tractors with hay or something in Normandy during that time. And then also just being offered Calvados after every meal. There would always, even when you're stuffed, they're like, oh, a little Calvados, and like really pushing the Calvados after every meal, which is fun.
Excellent. Well, speaking of Calvados, a little correction on myself here. I put Billy's Farm in Bayeux. It's 23 minutes east in Rot, R-O-T-S. Rot.
Okay.
Excellent.
Nice.
And if you had to summarize Normandy in just 3 words, what 3 words would you use?
I would say history. There's a lot of it there.
A lot of it there.
Architecture.
Okay.
And apples. I don't know what that popped in.
Apples.
And apples. So much apple stuff everywhere. Yeah.
Excellent.
It's very beautiful.
Our guest again has been Kat Butler from, and I named all the places, but worldwidehoneymoon.com and the Worldwide Honeymoon podcast and francevoyager.com. And Kat, if we wanted to send people to your best podcast on Normandy, do you have one?
I do. Oh gosh.
You'll send me the link.
Yes, I will send you the link. I'm pretty sure I did do an episode about a Normandy road trip as well. If not, I have episodes about Deauville I could send you.
Excellent. And then if we want to send people to your best post on francevoyager.com about Normandy, where are we going to send people?
I have a 7-day road trip itinerary that's literally what I just talked about.
That is
all
a
of that,
coincidence.
Yeah, I could send that right to you. And if you want to do this exact thing, you could just go there and check that out.
Excellent. And I'll put a link to my 3-day itinerary, depending on which time you have. But yours sounded wonderful. I'm ready to go back and do that. So
yeah, thank
Kat,
you.
Thanks so much for coming on Amateur Traveler and sharing with us your love for France and specifically your love for Normandy.
Thank you so much, Chris.
Special thanks to the patrons of the show who help support Amateur Traveler financially. They get shows early. They've had this show for more than a week. They also get a monthly Zoom call with me. For more information on becoming a patron of the show, go to patreon.com/Amateur Traveler. At this point in the show, I usually talk about what's new on the Amateur Traveler website, but this show is almost recorded back to back with the last one because I'm heading off tomorrow for Majorca in Spain. You'll hear more about that in the podcast probably when I get back. So with that, let's wrap up this episode of Amateur Traveler. If you have any questions, send an email to host@amateurtraveler.com, or better yet, leave a comment on this episode at amateurtraveler.com. And thanks so much for listening.
I got to see one more cathedral. I got to sit in one more cafe. I know that I should be heading home, but maybe not today.
There you have it. Hope you enjoyed that episode of the Amateur Traveler podcast. You can get it wherever you listen to podcasts. Thank you to Chris Christensen for working with us and providing this episode for you today. Hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget, we have a newsletter over at zerototravel.com/newsletter where you can keep up on all the latest and greatest. I write it each and every week, and it's free to sign up. So please join the community over there and get in touch anytime. Wanted to leave you with a quote, a French quote, of course, before I let you go. Actually, it's a French proverb, at least according to the internet. I'm not going to read it in French because I don't want to destroy your ears, but I will read the English translation. Quote, "In a great mind, everything is great." Thanks for listening. I'll see you next time. Peace and love to you and yours. Cheers.
This podcast has been brought to you by zerototravel.com. Ideas and advice to make your travel dreams a reality.